Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Caroline Slater.
And I'm her brother Sean.
And today we are talking about a minute 114. It starts with, for Sony Pictures, ImageWorks credits, and ends a minute later with the soundtrack and score credits.
What did you title this minute?
So many names!
There aren't that many names. There's only 175 that appear on the screen this time.
This time.
130 of them going to ImageWorks, and then 45 going to Sony Pictures Animations.
And one of them, I count as myself, we have another Carolyn!
Yeah, another poser.
Yeah, not a poser, it's just our names get mixed up a lot. It is Carolyn Graham from the Studio Infrastructure, and her career was not short. She's done a lot, but I couldn't find exactly what she does because I'm just not familiar with it. She is currently an executive assistant at DreamWorks Animation. She was an executive assistant at Sony Pictures Entertainment until June of 2019. And before that, she worked for Mattel Incorporated for 13 years.
Yeah, not much to say on her.
Yeah, just we share kind of a name.
Yeah. Yeah, another Sean's in this minute. You know, boring people working on a not boring movie. But yeah, so today we're going to talk about the second trailer, which came out a lot closer to the release of the movie. This one was released October 2nd of 2018, about just over 2 months before the release of the movie. And this one's a lot closer to what the final product looks like.
Mm-hmm. There's they use a lot of the comedic bits and small changes here and there. It was pretty cool. And just some very fun editing as well. But we'll talk about that once we dive more into the similarities and differences. I
really remember when this one came out, it actually made me a bit nervous about the film because of how many gags they put into it. Where a lot of not bad movies, but comedies that are, on the not as good side will usually stick all their funny bits in the trailers, and then when you actually go to watch the movie, you're like, oh wow, that was literally all the jokes all the good jokes that they had.
Yeah, it's like, oh, those are the only funny bits in the movie.
Yeah, and this movie definitely has more than just those.
Yeah, what I particularly love about this trailer, besides all of the bits they put in it, and they put in some pretty iconic bits, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I also like how the editing in it is a really clever way of again, they kind of sort of imply that this is a Miles who is been Spider-Man, maybe not for too long, because we do hear him say, you'll teach me how to be Spider-Man, so maybe he's still an early Spider-Man, but that he still has his own suit, and he's kind of been Spider-Man for a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely it continues that we only see him in his final suit, and we don't see him wearing the store-bought suit at all.
No, we do see him in the store-bought suit a few times.
Starting with the beginning of the trailer, right before it officially opens, maybe? I'm not sure. We're watching it off of the Sony Pictures YouTube channel is what we're getting these from, so they're about as official as you can get. But starting at the very beginning of that, we see Miles swinging through the city with his backpack still on, and we don't see that happening at all during the movie.
One thing I will say right after that, it cuts to, I really like how they did this. I'm going to talk about the editing a lot in this trailer, besides just the differences, because I genuinely love how they edited this movie. I love how they started it out actually with Peter's story first. And that's something different, where it's not different, but it's kind of the same, but a little different. And I like how they say it's yeah, but this is not my story. And then they do a really cool switch to Miles's universe.
Yeah, and with that backstory too, they even combine the two different Spider-Men backstories. They combine Peter Parker's and Peter B. Parker's to make it seem like it's one backstory from the clips.
The one thing I also especially like too is that they used Peter B. Parker's voice actor for it and not
Peter Parker's.
Yeah. It's like a nice surprise when you're watching the movie and you're like, oh hey, that's Chris Pine's voice. Although you kind of don't notice it as Chris Pine right away.
Yeah, and then when we cut, it cuts and says like, oh yeah, but this is actually the kid's story.
It's like, this is this guy's story.
Some of the lines that they change, or two of the lines during the collider bit that they change, is as the collider collides with itself. There's like a robot lady's voice that says, dimension opening now, which doesn't get said. And then when Miles first meets Peter and he's like, hey, you're like me, Miles says, I don't want to be, instead of, or in the movie, Miles says, I don't want to be, whereas in the trailer, he says that's impossible.
Yeah, and it's again, there's some very clever editing here as they make it look like it's Peter B. Parker talking to him.
It looks like a single Peter Parker. We don't really know which one it is.
But having seen the movie, my brain is kind of like, oh, they're making it look like Peter B. Parker said. The next major difference we saw, jumping ahead to the forest scene, where we see Miles, and I just want to point out, and this is the only time we see him in the store-bought outfit in this trailer.
Yeah.
And we get some very clever cuts. First off, we don't see Doc Ock at all.
Yeah, they do a really good job, and they talked about this like during the scene in the animator or in the director's commentary.
And I think we touched on it, but let's touch on it again.
How they were trying to make Doc Ock's reveal a surprise, which they did. Like, I don't, at least didn't get leaked that I'm aware of, or if it did, it wasn't anything major. Yeah,
I don't remember really hearing anything of it. And they got really clever with how they even like showed Gwen as well, because in the movie, it's her fighting Doc Ock, obviously, but they get some very clever cuts here in the trailer where we see Gwen shooting her web, and in the movie she's shooting at Doc's arms, but here they cut it to make it look like she's grabbing Peter and Miles.
Yeah, and once they get caught, Peter says, "Who are you?" But because they dub over it, or they dub it over to when Miles is saying Gwanda, so it looks like Miles is saying, "Who are you?" with Peter's voice.
I realized it when we were watching the trailer, and it's one of the funniest things to me, because I never noticed it before. My eyes always kind of fell on regular Peter.
Yeah.
And then I just realized watching, like, wait, Miles' lips are moving. Is he saying this?
And also they have her like land in her pirouette
in a point, in a grand plie point. I don't think it's an actual grand plie, but
yeah. But then in the movie, they have her just walk onto the branch.
Yeah, we don't see her land; we just kind of see her walk in. And
then the next bits is when we get the Spider-Ham gag, and there it has Gwen say like, "Okay." Just weirded out by him, and in the movie that doesn't actually happen. And when they're in Miles's room after he leaves that bit and goes on his little adventure, and after I guess it's after the his little adventure of going to his uncle and then getting chased by him. But once they go to his dorm room after his death, his uncle's death, she says, "We need to get back to our universes soon," and they kind of dub that line over when she normally says, "We're probably the only ones that do understand," which is a good way of also hiding his uncle's death.
Yeah, it's a good one. They do some really clever dubs of like using scenes from the movie but dubbing them over. Another good one, and this is after this, is they use the shot of Kingpin early in the movie where he says the line, "It's not always about the money, Spider-Man." And instead they dub over it, "This was never your city, it's mine."
Yeah.
Very clever dub.
They do a good job too, because they like only show the face for briefly, so they don't have to like actually show the lips move around a whole lot.
Well, in that one they really get away with it, because his lips move very subtly even when he's saying the line.
Yeah. But they don't have to worry about it lining up too much.
That doesn't sync up.
And then the last difference in the trailer is at the very end. They kind of state the thesis of the whole movie, or one of them anyway.
One of the many.
Yeah, which is the remember what makes you different is what makes you Spider-Man. Never gets said in the movie. Like Miles kind of reiterates that at the very end of the movie with his like anyone can be under the mask and
Yeah.
it could be you.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the closest we get to that being flat out stated in the movie.
I wonder if they were originally going to go with this, remember what makes you different is what makes you Spider-Man, and then I bet they decided to change it to kind of be more universal of this whole, like, anyone can be under the mask idea, because that's a little bit of more of a universal thing, and so it's like, you know, you gotta get bitten by a radioactive spider, and that's what makes you different, and that's what makes you Spider-Man. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. I know they were, like, kind of tinkering around with how they were trying to get that ending bit done, but I don't remember if this was in the contention at that point.
Yeah. I like the one they went with. I like this one too. It's a nice one.
Yeah.
But I like the one they ended up putting in the movie.
That was all that we had different between the two trailers and the what actually made it into the movie. This one didn't have a whole lot. A lot of time in a lot of movies, not in a lot of movies. In some movies, you'll see that they have like a lot more changed between trailers, or sometimes the visual effects won't be nearly as complete in between the two different trailers. And I feel like this one they really focused on, and it probably helps a little bit that it's animated, but it didn't feel like they had anything VFX wise like underdone for the trailers.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious. Do you have a preference of the two trailers?
I mean, I like the second trailer because it's longer.
This is fair. It's fair.
But the first trailer has the cool, like I really like the shot of Miles jumping off of the cab.
Yeah.
Like it would be interesting. It would be kind of cool to see a movie based off of like if that first trailer was actually the like final trailer right before.
Yeah.
And see kind of where that would have went.
I like them both. I think I like the first one a little more just because it piques a bit more intrigue with me.
Yeah.
I do really like the second one though because it does like, oh, it's a comedy. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it gets that across. Thank you for joining us this week. Tune in next week for the final 3-ish minutes of the movie. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at SpiderVerseMin, MIN, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Spiderverse Minute. If you want to send us an email, you can shoot one on over to podcast@spiderverseminute.com.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.